Aloha and welcome to Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroots Institute. One of the wonderful things about being in Hawaii is that we get to connect with people from across the world who are coming and who are going, or some who make their living by doing both. And such is my guest today, who travels between Hawaii and China, as well as all across the world, carrying out the passion of promoting freedom. Freedom through economic education. My guest, Li Schoolland, is an educator. She has spent many years working with students from across the planet, as well as grown-ups, trying to promote those things that make life better for everyone. Please welcome to our program today, Li Schoolland. Li, welcome.
Thank you.
So glad you're on board. You know, you
Thank
do
you.
so many different things, and you do them
Yes.
so well, and you're
Thank
traveling
you.
all the time. You're hardly ever here at home. Well, what exactly do you do? How would you describe your profession?
I'm an educator.
You're an educator.
Yes.
And you're educating people in what?
In idea of freedom,
The idea of freedom.
economic freedom, political freedom, and personal freedom, personal liberty.
Obviously, you sense that there is a great need for education in these kinds of freedom across the world.
Yes.
And so, how did you get started? I mean, where's your home from? You're from China. What province?
I was born in Tianjin, China. Lived there for 11 years.
And what part of China is that?
That was about less than 200 miles south of Beijing.
Okay. And you grew up during the Cultural Revolution, didn't
Yes.
you? So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about that.
It was a hell.
Really?
Yes.
What-
It's hard to describe in few words, but
About how old were you at that time?
I was, when Cultural Revolution started, I was 9 years old.
You were 9 years old under the reign of Mao Zedong.
Yes.
And what were some of the things you experienced as a 9-year-old at home, for example?
My father was put in prison
Hmm.
because he just told a friend a joke. And immediately he was labeled anti-communist and put in prison and hard labor.
So the friend reported him.
Yes, another doctor. He was a medical doctor.
Mhm.
Doing the surgery, he was just chit-chat with somebody and small talks. And after the surgery, he was took to prison.
And people lived under the fear of somebody reporting them or turning
Yes.
them in. What did that do to human relationships?
Children turn their parents in. Spouses turn each other in. Friends, there's no friendship, no trust. Everybody lived in fears. Nobody can say anything, speak of their minds. Even what you eat or what you wear could brought you to prison.
You know, you've devoted your life to promoting freedom. Did it have much to do with your experience as a child in the Cultural Revolution?
Yes, definitely, because I lived under the extreme of dictatorship. We had no freedom whatsoever at all. We couldn't, if we smile at the wrong time, we're in trouble. Not just what you say. So it's extreme.
What were some of the kinds of oppression or absence of freedom that you experienced? Here in the United States, we itemize our freedoms. We say we have the Bill of Rights. We begin with the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, and so forth, the freedom to bear arms. What was lacking for you during those years and your people?
Every aspect in life. Like I said earlier, if you are going to the restroom in the wrong time, you're in trouble. If you eat the things other people are not eating, you're in trouble. If you, of course, you couldn't say anything as you want. Even you didn't do anything, just because your great-great-great-grandfather was labeled black, you're in trouble. We had 2 gates at the train station, for example. One is for red people, one is for black people. And for me, because my great-great-grandparents were not revolutionary, labeled revolutionary fighters, or they were rich, so we were automatically became black. So we were born in black family. So we have to use the black entrance for the train or for the buses, and people at any time can spit at us, throw rocks at us, or just beat us up.
And this kind of social caste system had nothing to do with race. It had to do with just some information about your past.
Yes, it's your ancestors.
Yes,
yeah.
That's something, you know. Now, eventually, of course, you became a United States citizen, and
yes.
and are married to an American.
Mm-hmm.
But what was it that happened that allowed you to leave China?
In 1984, China started open up and reform.
Mm-hmm.
So by then, I finished university, and
in China.
In China, because in 1977, Chinese universities reopened, allowed almost anybody who can pass the entrance examination to be a university student.
Mm-hmm.
So I became university student in 1978. So in 1984, I applied to be a graduate student in the United States. That's why I came.
And eventually you stayed here? Is that what took place?
Yes. I finished my graduate study,
mm-hmm.
but I was going to return to China, but 1989, the Tiananmen demonstration happened and the massacre happened. So I
June
changed
of 1989.
Yeah, so I changed my mind. I decided I'm not going to return to China. I recall the reason I left, because there was no freedom.
Well, what took place there? There's so many different stories that at the time, most people in China didn't understand it. Did you become aware of what was going on in Tiananmen Square because you were outside of China and had better information?
No, I cannot say I understood entirely, but to me, those students went onto the street because they are so tired of seeing their beloved government become so corrupt. So they want a cleaner government. They want a better leader. They didn't try to overthrow the Chinese Communist Party, the government. They just want a better government.
I remember at the time I was a high school student, and actually I was a student in college. I just started university. One of the scenes that impressed me the most was a student talking to a reporter saying that the government had lost the mandate of heaven. They had lost the right to rule the people because they had forfeited that. Was there a sense that there was injustice on a very broad scale that demanded a protest?
That I don't know, but I think it just at the time maybe the students, they just want to do something.
So you decided that was it for you. You were not going to go back there as a student or a recent graduate. Instead, you'd stay in the West.
Yes.
And what was it about that caused you to make that decision? Were you thinking, this is just more evidence that China is repressive and I just don't want to live there?
Yes, because I remember the reason I left is I want the freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I told my husband, I'm not going to go back to China to face people who have blood on their hands of innocent students and people.
Now, as we zoom ahead, you came to the United States, you completed your education, you became a teacher, you got married, you have a family, and so forth. But you've found your way back to China many times now. In fact, you're not staying away, but you're going there as often as you can. In fact, you're traveling across the world. How many countries have you traveled to?
I've been to 55 countries.
55, so that's about
Yes.
half the countries on the earth, and you've been carrying on a type of crusade, a mission to
Yes.
spread freedom.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Actually, I didn't go back to China after I left for 11 years because I just didn't want to go back to the place. Gave me so many scars and bad memories. Just like a Jewish person didn't want to go back to the concentration camp.
Yes.
So, but in 1989, 1990, Berlin Wall fell.
Yes.
That made me so excited. So I was so happy to see so many countries' Communist Party disappeared. So I told my husband, who is an economic professor, I told him, let's go there. First of all, I want to see how people's life changed, how a country changed when the government changed from dictatorship to free
Yes.
democratic government. So I made it to Russia, and then I focused on traveling to all the former Soviet countries,
Former Soviet
and the
countries.
Eastern blocs. I've been to almost all the countries, and brought the idea of free market economic principles because I knew they didn't have it, because it was not taught in the universities. So that I thought we have something to offer.
Free market principles. We're going to talk about that after we take a break. But you mentioned different kinds of freedom. Economic freedom. What were the other kinds
Political
of freedom?
freedom.
Political freedom.
And personal liberty.
And personal liberty. But you found your path by promoting economics.
Yes.
I'm interested in that because did you find that it was an easier door to go through with the economic principles rather than talking about political or individual freedoms?
Because they already had their political freedom after they overthrown the communist government.
Okay, yes.
And personal liberty, I think people have to understand it and find it themselves. So economic freedom, to me, that will help the entire society, especially if we can influence some of the policymakers and young people. They can practice it. It will be very beneficial for their country.
And that's what you've also been promoting in
Yes.
China. We're going to come right back after a very brief break. I'm talking with Li Schoolland, an international educator who promotes free market principles in order ultimately to promote liberty that is political and individual. She does this in China and around the world, and we're going to be with her when we come right back after this brief message. Don't go away.
Aloha, my name is Josh Green. I host a show called Healthcare in Hawaii here on ThinkTech. We get together once a week or sometimes twice a month. Depends. When we're busy, we get together less often, but we love to see you here to talk about the preeminent healthcare issues in our state. Our programs vary very widely. We talk about economics, we talk about healthcare, we talk about social issues on this program. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome back to Ehana Kako. That means let's work together, and we're here every week on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. I'm Keli'i Akina with the Grassroots Institute, and we're very pleased with our partnership with ThinkTech Hawaii. I'd like to say thank you to Jay Fidel, producer of ThinkTech Hawaii, and all the wonderful team who are putting on the programs week after week. You can see all the content on www.thinktechhawaii.com. My guest today, Li Schoolland, travels the world promoting freedom. In her youth, she experienced the terrors of the Cultural Revolution in China, but that impacted her in such a way that she devotes her life to spreading economic, political, and individual freedom. We're going to dive right back into our conversation with her, and I want to ask Li a little bit about these principles. You grew up at a time when China was under a dominant, massive, centrally controlled economic system and political system. The same thing was true of the Soviet Union, and you saw that fall. And you've seen other ways economies can be structured. What are some of those principles that you promote when you go back to China, for example? Recently, you were a sponsor of a wonderful event that you take across the world, the Austrian Economic Summit, and you did that in Shanghai in 2014.
And 2012.
And 2012. So what are these principles that you're introducing?
It's market economy versus planned economy.
So an economy driven by the forces of the market,
yes,
where people have freedom to buy and to sell,
right,
and so forth, as opposed to a government sitting down and controlling everything.
Yes, because when I was growing up in China, because my father was imprisoned in the hard labor camp, our whole family was exiled to a remote village in the south of China from a big city. And I became, at age of 11, I became a peasant in rural China. So we plant rice.
And let me just pause for a moment. Prior to that, though, your father was a doctor. He was a respected member of society. I assume you had income.
Yeah, was a surgeon. My mother was a college professor. But when we were exiled, my father still practiced as a doctor without anything. My mother couldn't teach anymore, so she became my father's helper to do surgeries without any training. And my little brother and I, we helped with the surgery. And we build clinics, we make our utensils, equipment, and we save lives that way without electricity or running water. And so...
And without the Affordable Care Act.
No, definitely not. And but I learned how to farm, plant rice, sweet potatoes, and sugarcane, corn, all of that. The area we were exiled, it was a hilly landscape, and the soil was not good for planting rice, but good for tobacco and other cash crops. But the central government, thousands of miles away in Beijing, decided the whole country need to plant rice because that's the only way they can feed the whole country. So our area, they have to follow the direction. So they turn those hilly landscape into terraces of rice paddies. But there were no water. You have to have water to plant rice. So we have to carry water miles and miles away from the river to up to the hills to dump into the terraces, and they got sucked up by the soil right away. And I remember we sold more seeds than we can harvest. We could harvest. So they said, the central government said, okay, if you are not harvesting enough, let's do double cropping. So you plant twice a year, and it still failed. They told us to plant 3 times a year. The soil has no nutrient in there, and everybody was so poor. After a year of hard labor, the peasants can't afford to have 1 meal a year with solid rice. Only 1 meal a year at New Year's Eve. And those rice, cooked rice, only given to the male in the family. The females in the family never can afford to even eat a bite of cooked rice. They just have some rice soup and no land for vegetables, just some salt and pepper. Every day, drink some soup with rice. You can count the grains in the soup.
Now I can imagine this happening village after village, city after city, whether it's industrial or agriculture. With this central control, there's this total inefficiency.
Right.
And the market is not allowed to operate in a free way.
Yes.
And what is it that Well, what happened ultimately to China's economy as a result of this?
People are dying of starvation, and they were just more than half the country, the population were starving. And I saw it firsthand. And my neighbor, a family of 6 people that have one pair of trousers. Whoever goes out of the house get to wear it. They are so poor. And they're the one supposedly producing the food. And they're the pillar, the backbone of the society. They knew how to plant, how to farm. They know what will grow in the land, but they have no say. They have to listen to the people from thousands of miles away. So that's when, at a very young age, I knew the planned economy doesn't work. And also, at that time, the communist government told the people, God created the world is not perfect, so we have to fix it. I remember we spent months to correct the river because the river was curved, not straight. They said a river takes too much land, so we have to make the river straight, so we will make more land for farming. But they didn't know after they dug a straight riverbed, let water go, water disappeared because the old river was sand in the bottom. The new dug river was mud. And after they corrected the old riverbed, you couldn't do anything because it was sand. You couldn't plant. But that's how stupid those decision makers were. But we just have no choice. We have to just work and work day after day, night after night, and doing things to correct God's creation.
You know, this sounds so antithetical to what I understand Chinese culture to have. There's always been this strong entrepreneurship. Chinese have been known for their merchants and so forth, even though there was always the emperors who would interfere with that and take what they wanted. You never had to tell Chinese about money. You never had, or how to make money and so forth. So it looks as though the entire culture of that entrepreneurship was just stifled.
Yes.
It was, that's right.
Yeah.
It was killed during that time. And so
it's not very short time, it's more than 10 years.
And so this is the lack of economic freedom.
Yes.
Now, going fast forward, you have a wonderful relationship with Ken Schoolland. And you have a beautiful child together. And I know because I've had the opportunity, my wife and I have had the opportunity to meet her, and your husband's name is Ken, your name is Li, so you named her Ken Li.
Yes, Chinese way.
And she went to the London School of Economics, which I don't think is an accident. But there's a certain tool that you and Ken Schoolland use called Jonathan Gullible.
Yes.
That talks about the exact opposite of, or principles that are exact opposite to what you describe in central control. In fact, that little book kind of makes fun of central control.
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes.
Because you've taken that little book, The Adventures of Jonathan Gullible, which critiques a centrally controlled government and shows the value of free market economics. You've taken that across the world.
Yes. Actually, the book first published in 1988. I tried really hard to get the book translated into Chinese. And the people who censor the publications understood the content, the message, so didn't approve of the translation for about more than 10 or 15 years later. Finally, the first edition was published in China. That's the first breakthrough. And before that, of course, the first foreign edition of that book was in Russia. And that was the first free market book in Russia.
Is that right?
Yeah. After that, Lithuania, Poland, Estonia, all these countries start publishing it.
There are dozens of countries. What's the count right now of translations?
Right now, translation is 49.
49 translations of this little book, The Adventures of Jonathan Gullible. And now, of course, Chinese.
Chinese have second edition already.
How about that?
Yes. And I met young people around the world told me they'd grown up with that book, and that book changed their lives.
How about that? Well, you know, I also, in my work with the Grassroot Institute and my academic work, do quite a bit of travel to China, and I've taken the book many times and given it as a goodwill gift and so forth
Thank
to
you.
people. And the surprising thing is this: even though people know it is written by your husband, Ken Schoolland, more people have told me they know Li Schoolland and have gotten a copy of the book or heard about it through you. Why is
Yes.
that?
Because I started to bring the teaching of free market economics to China 6 years ago. I partnered with Northeastern University, which my great uncle started that university. So because our special relationship, the university allowed me to bring this teaching
How
to their
wonderful.
university. What I did was I invited world-renowned free market economists, voluntarily went there every summer to teach about 100 students from that university. We taught them the principle of Austrian school economics, which is market economy, free market.
How many years has this been going on?
We finished our fifth year.
So for 5 years,
Yes,
and you've
every
had
single year.
about 100 students each
Yes.
time? That's tremendous, and
Yes.
training them in free market economics.
Yes, because even though China has been opened up, a lot of people thought China is a capitalist economic system, but free market principles like Austrian school economics are not taught in any universities in China.
So you're really supplementing the education there,
Yes.
and ultimately bringing the economic freedom upon which political freedom and individual freedom
Right.
will be based. We're going to come back after another short break and talk with Li Schoolland, who is an international educator promoting principles of free market economics. It's been a fascinating conversation just hearing about her personal life and what she's doing. And when we come back, we'll dive in a little bit more to see what is going on in terms of advancing free market principles of economics in China and the world. I'll be right back after this.
Hi, I'm Jay Fidel. I'm here with Liz Shue, and we love agritech. In fact, she's from the Department of Agriculture, and we're underwater, gurgle, 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 and we love things that have to do with agriculture, aquaponics, hydroponics, all that. So Liz, what is your interest in this?
To grow more local food for local people.
I knew that.
Yes.
Okay, it's 4 to 5 every other Monday. Come and see us on Agritech in the Islands. I'm Jay Fidel. Come learn with us. We'll see you then.
Aloha.
Welcome back to Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. I'm Keli'i Akina. I've mentioned the Grassroot Institute before, and that's a place where ideas come together and scholars work to make those ideas reality. One of our scholars is Ken Schoolland, who has authored a book, The Adventures of Jonathan Gullible. And one of our associates is his wife, Li Schoolland, who's my guest today. I just want to say that this couple is doing remarkable work across the world, promoting freedom by promoting the principles of free market economics. And if you haven't gotten a copy yet, you certainly should look up The Adventures of Jonathan Gullible. You can get a hold of us at the Grassroot Institute, www.grassrootinstitute.org, and we'll make sure you get a copy. But back to our conversation with Li. Li, taking the book Jonathan Gullible and along with that, bringing world-class scholars together to teach economics, what kind of doors has this opened up in terms of promoting freedom?
We raised up a lot of think tank and young people who love to learn, and also they are truth seekers. They start to read and translate books and hold discussion groups, book clubs. They're happening all over the places in China, in Shanghai, in Beijing especially.
How are young people responding? Young people meaning college students, graduates, and those who are young in their career. I assume that you've been working with a lot of them. What is their response to this message?
They actually, the entrepreneurs responded very well, because China is still, we call state capitalist.
Yes.
All the big companies and the economy is controlled by the government. Even there's capitalist practice. So young entrepreneurs, private business people have very hard time competing in the marketplace. So this, our teaching helped them to understand the power of market, give them encouragement, give them idea how to do their business and business ethics, because government doesn't compete fairly and with good ethics. So we're helping a lot of people in that way. And also the students, what they did was they're doing is translating more and more books in that area and publishing them.
What are some of the more popular books that are being translated?
All the Hayek.
Friedrich Hayek books.
Yes,
A free
Mises,
market. Ludwig von Mises.
Mises.
So the classic standards
Yes.
that we know in the West, but although we don't read them enough, are being read in China. And this is kind of ironic too, because when you talk about these authors, whether it's Hayek or von Mises or even Ayn Rand, if you will, or and so forth, these are not very well read in the United States. Is the United States more of a free market? Well, in some ways it is, but in what ways is the United States similar to Chinese central control market?
Actually, United States had the tradition of a free market.
Yes.
But because the tradition is there, people took it for granted. So they are going in wrong direction right now. The government is leading the society going in the wrong direction, having more and more control, and the government's hands in the marketplace more and more. That's just what it scares me. And China, I'm trying to help them to go the other direction, to help I cannot say I'm doing, let government have less control, but at least bring up the awareness of individuals.
Certainly.
So they can do something about it. Talking about Hayek, China has a very powerful social media called WeChat, because Facebook and YouTube are banned in China. So China came up with their own social media.
Now, WeChat, if I understand it correctly, is a much more sophisticated application than Facebook.
Yes.
And it allows live video interaction between people.
Yes.
And it's often used as a platform for large group communication.
Yes, exactly. It's a combination of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all these combined. What I was amazed was there is a Hayek study group.
Yes.
With 500 people, pay a lot of money to be in that group, and they have weekly classes. They took those classes very seriously. They read books, they do their homeworks. I met many of those students. They were entrepreneurs. They were not academic or students, and they want to learn. And about 5 or 6 professors, and they take turn teaching those classes. They can have live interactions, and also they assign homework in the different ways, like on Facebook kind of thing. It's very amazing. And I was just so happy to see so many people willing to learn.
That's fascinating to see that taking place. There's a hunger that's being satisfied.
Yes.
With the bringing of good teaching, bringing of economic values. That's just remarkable. And that hunger has an incubator in which to grow, I think, which are the special economic zones.
Yes.
So you've gone to Hong Kong, of course, and Shanghai, and so forth. What's the relationship between these special economic zones, which have much freer market than the centrally controlled China? You know, there's the doctrine of the one country, two systems, and one of the ways it plays out is that there's a central control over all the economy, but China allows some special economic zones. And in fact, Hong Kong is rated by the Heritage Foundation as the #1 economic free zone in the world. What's the relationship between those special economic zones and the rest of China? Do you think it will influence China, or do you think it's the other way around, that central control will take over a place like Hong Kong?
I think it's a two-way traffic. Actually, there are a lot of special economic zones in China, mostly in the east coast
Southeast
cities.
coast.
Yeah, southeast coast of China. Those are not real, how do I say, it's government set aside.
They're a hybrid.
Special, no, they're not intend to be implementable to rest of China. They were exclusively to lure foreign investors to set up factories to produce made in China stuff, and then those products not allowed to get into China. They're shipped it out immediately, and if China's market want to sell these products, they have to re-import them. So government never had the intention of expanding these zones or let it open up the whole China like that. So I just call it just like tax-free zones in our harbor here. But Hong Kong is a different story because the British government took control of Hong Kong for 99 years, and they basically just let it be itself. They have a governor, which is just a showpiece, have parties, and that's really make the Hong Kong miracle because, in my opinion, because there's almost no government.
You left China, and then the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre took place, and that was decisive for you in not returning. Now, you've been back and forth to Hong Kong, and you've observed what's taking place currently in Hong Kong in terms of the demonstrations against the central control of China. China has said, you can have free elections, but you have to choose the nominees that we give you. And Hong Kong has had tens of thousands of people, in fact, hundreds of thousands, react.
Occupy.
What are your thoughts as you're watching this now? Do you get reminded of Tiananmen Square? Or do you have fears, or do you see greater hope in what the outcome would be?
Actually, I didn't follow this closely because when that happened, I was traveling. I was in China. China, of course, did not report any of this.
That's right.
So I didn't know about it until many days later. It's a mixed groups of people. Not every group want the same thing. So I don't think the massacre will happen because it's Hong Kong. Even the tear gas caused such a reaction of the umbrellas. But I don't really see it getting anywhere either, because the demonstrators, they're not united, and also they're not they're not wanting the same thing. Chinese government is kind of just to wait and let the time pass, hoping that the demonstrators just getting tired and go away. And because they don't want to negotiate, otherwise people will see them as losers, because they want their strong power control still.
Yes.
They are hiring up to 300,000 people to use the social media to praise Chinese government. Actually, I heard a rumor, Chinese government spend more money on these kind of things more than their national security. they're budgeting more money for hiring those people, fake supporter on the social media to like them and to spread the word for the government.
How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you also work with some groups in China who are trying to promote free market thinking. Think tanks in Beijing and also in Hong Kong. What do these people experience? People who live in China, particularly those in Beijing, who are trying to promote free market economics in their day jobs. They may be teachers or professors and have to be very careful, but
Yes.
they come together and they talk very much like you in terms of their passion for free market economics. What's it like for them?
Actually, you use the word they're very careful. That's correct. They don't exactly talk like me because I'm more fearless.
Yes.
And they still have their jobs, their family to worry about. Sometimes they were invited by me to speak in different places. They couldn't go because the government just wouldn't allow them. Every time they travel, they have to get the government approval. And some of them, the passport is held by the government. Even if they want to go somewhere, they have to plead with the government, give my passport to me so I can go to visit a friend in Hawaii, something like that. So they know how to say things correctly or not cause them too much trouble.
Well, they don't have that freedom fully yet, even to talk about economic freedom.
No.
Some of them I know cleverly talk about free market economics by studying it as an academic discipline. We're going to study this book by Hayek and so forth, part of the curriculum, as if you were to
religion too.
put Bible or something like that as well. Well, it's fascinating. I appreciate your support and your work with such groups because they rely heavily upon those from outside of China to help communicate these principles within China.
I feed them speakers. I bring speakers from around the world, and then they can have a discussion sessions or academic discussion sections with these scholars.
Sometimes I'm struck with how eager and how hungry people in China are to hear principles of free market economics, whereas in our own country, there doesn't seem to be so much of a desire.
Because most people born into the most free country in the world, so they don't realize how precious freedom is if you have never tasted on free society, the life under dictatorship. For us, because we lived through the hell, so we appreciate freedom and we fight with our lives.
Li, what a wonderful note to end our program on. I've been with Li Schoolland, a true teacher of freedom here in the United States, but also across the world. I'm Keli'i Akina with the Grassroots Institute. My guest, Li Schoolland, and this is Ehana Kako every week on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. We'll see you next week. Aloha.